For anyone who just joined us, be sure that you have three things: your Constitution, your pocket Constitution, this little piece, and your Constitution Basics packet. And if you missed it, turn to page 1, and you can be working on the U.S. citizenship exam if you want to, while we wait to get started. Although, I think we're about ready, right?
Great. We'd sure like to welcome everybody. You are the brave ones here the last hour of the last day and willing to put up with a little more education. And well, that's great. When I teach, I say, these are my A students. They're the ones who hang in and do the very best. So you are the A students today. So thank you for joining us. My name is Paul Skousen, and this is my sister Sharon Skousen Krey. And some of you may have heard of W. Cleon Skousen. He's our father. He wrote The Naked Communist. He wrote The 5,000-Year Leap, The Making of America, and about 45 books. And he lectured up and down the country in the 50s and 60s heavily, sometimes 400 speeches a year. When I worked at CIA, I went into the CIA Central Library, and they have an old historical intelligence collection, and I went in there and I said, look, that's The Naked Communist. That's my dad's book. And this old seasoned CIA guy, he says, really? That's your father? And he said, did you know that when we were first starting out with intelligence and the communism fight, none of us knew what communism was, really. It's a religion, a cult, a following, some feel-good thing. And it wasn't until your father's book came out, Naked Communist, that we understood, and that became our Bible until we found out more about communism. So anyway, that legacy, that interest, that passion has continued into the family. And so Sharon and I are here today to talk a little more about our passion, and I know it's yours, the Constitution. Sharon is going to share some thoughts first. She has some handouts there for you. She's been teaching constitutional basic workshops across the country and has had a whole lot of fun with that, to clubs and organizations. And her home is in Washington State, but she's branched out to the Intermountain West quite a bit, and was doing workshops for the Republican Women's National Convention even. And so here she is to share some great thoughts on the Constitution. Please.
Thank you. The Constitution, the golden mean between anarchy and tyranny. We have to thank Aristotle for giving us this great idea, because he talks about how the golden mean is the difference between two extremes, one over here and one over here, and the golden mean is the perfect ideal in the middle, and that's our Constitution. It can also be like you have hot and cold, and the golden mean would be right in the middle as warm. Or you have starvation over here and gluttony over here, and right in the middle would be the China study program. How many of you saw that? That was a great ideal of the best kind of foods that you can eat. So the Constitution is the golden mean also. The Founding Fathers worked 4 months on it and got the most perfect ideal that they could for a federal government. If you have this in your hands, this shows how the Constitution, which is represented by the three-headed eagle, is right in the middle. And on your left, it's got tyranny, and on your right, it's got anarchy. And we also call tyranny ruler's law, because that is the end of the spectrum that gives 100% government. And whether it's communism or Nazism or socialism or fascism or Fabian socialist or progressive, in a way it's all the same. They want to be the dictators of everything that we do. They're all just a little bit different. But pretty much the same idea. Then on the other end, on the right-hand side, we have mob rule, and that is just as bad because there's no law, and that means that there's chaos. Now, just to ask a question to you to see kind of where we're at out here, how many, since, we hear about these laws that are being passed in Congress and in the Senate having thousands and thousands of pages, how many articles does the Constitution have? Anybody know? Is it 100? Does it have 100 articles? Really, no one knows? Brit? 7. Right, 7. Only 7. Isn't that crazy? The world was built in 7 days, and we have 7 articles in the Constitution. And why do we only need that many? Because it's just for the federal government. And of course, when you come down to the state and the local government, we can have as many more laws as we want. But in the federal government, we just need a few laws for the nation as a whole. So that's what that leg sasser is at the top. Each one of those letters represents one of the articles. And by memorizing that strange word, leg sasser, you can memorize the 7 articles and what is in each article. So if someone asks you, where is the president's oath? Where can we find that? Then you would know that it was in which article. Right, the second article is all about the president. So see how that would help to memorize the word leg sasser? It's kind of like a word from Star Wars. I hate to give Darth Vader. Who's...
Yeah, C-3PO, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
And Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, Luke
there we go. There we go. Yeah. Luke Skywalker. And yeah, it's kind of like that, leg sasser, okay? And another way to remember it is that the LEJ stands for the three-headed eagle, or legislative, executive, and judicial. And the word sasser, it's kind of like we are the sassers of the legislation, or we should be. We need to be much stronger. That's another way, another trick to remember it. And so, kind of what we're doing today as we go through this, because I know most of this crowd is really knowledgeable on these things, I think, but you didn't know there were 7 articles. I'm worried, Paul. Now you know. But for a lot of you, this will be a review. But I'm hoping that you can take some of these ideas, especially the fun techniques that I will give you, to teach to the next generation, to teach them what the golden mean of which is the Constitution, to teach them what it is and how important it is for us to understand the founders' way of expressing the supreme laws of our land so that we can resurrect the Constitution and know what we're doing when it is resurrected. We had a debate yesterday. Should we give up the Constitution or should we resurrect it? And I say that we resurrect it because the Founding Fathers have already done the work for us. And if we can learn it, knowledge is power. And that will help us to go ahead and teach the younger generation so that they can pass it on. Okay, so looking at this chart, which is the political spectrum, we see that the very first article is all about the legislature. The second article is all about executive or president. The J, judicial, is for the Supreme Court, but we're calling it judicial. Number 4 is all about the states. Number 5 is how to amend the Constitution. The 6th article has 3 sentences in it, and the reason there's a $sign on there is because the first sentence says, we will pay all our debts. Did you know that? Yeah. And the second, and we're going to read it, in fact. The second sentence says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That means states can make laws any laws they want, but they cannot supersede the laws of the land. And the class just before us was talking all about that as far as legalization of marijuana goes. So that was an interesting discussion. We'll see what happens on that. And then the third sentence says you can give no religious test. And then the last article of the Constitution is R for ratification, and that just means it's one sentence that says 9 out of the 13 colonies or states had to say that they agreed with this brand new Constitution that was just written, and that it would then be ratified or become law. Let's turn to, in your pocket Constitution, turn to Article 6. Did you find it? Okay, it's on page 28. See how short it is? Oh, really? Okay. Oh, no, I just looked at 4 and thought it was 6 for Roman numeral. Okay, sorry. Okay, see where it starts out, the very beginning, and read along with me, and then you can say, well, I've read Article 6 of the Constitution, and people will think that you've read 1,000 pages, right? Okay, all debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of the Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as it was under the Articles of Confederation, is what that means. Okay, so does that not set a precedence? Do we not set precedences in the Supreme Court, and after they make a law, then everyone else follows that? Well, here's another precedence. We pay our debts. And of course, is it 17 trillion? We're up to right now. So we need to get back. We need to get back to basics. Okay, and here's the second sentence then. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And by the way, the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or law of the state to the contrary notwithstanding. And the senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, governors, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Now that came about because every state, every colony back in 1776 had their own religion. And some of them were saying, you can't be the mayor, no, unless you're a Quaker. You can't be governor unless you're a Presbyterian. That was going on back then. And so that's why that is in here. But it still applies to us today, doesn't it? And the First Amendment. Now, what about that thing that says under the all treaties made are the supreme law under the authority of the United States? What about that? Isn't that sort of scary, especially some of the treaties that Obama is doing right now? Well, if you go back to Article 2. It's on page 25, and it's on Section 2, and right at the bottom where it says, he, speaking of the president, shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the senators present concur. Okay, and so that sentence right there says, no, Obama cannot go and make a treaty. Unless he has the advice and consent, and then the voting of the Senate of 2/3. So the Constitution, there are some things that you have to go back and forth. But look how short it is. Wouldn't it be a great idea on September 17th to just read this Constitution? And keep in mind that it is the golden mean. The three-headed eagle here, we have in the middle the legislature, which with the House and the Senate as the eyes, because they have to see eye to eye before they can pass a bill, right? And then one of the heads is executive, and one of the heads is judicial. We call this people's law. Where the eagle is holding arrows, that means we're strong on defense, and the Constitution is very clear on that. And where he's holding the olive leaf, that means peace. And then here's the triangle of the importance in the Constitution, the individual being the most important, then family, city, county, state, and the least important is the federal. That's why it's so small. There's a conservative wing and the problem-solving wing. And whenever there's a problem that needs to be solved, the conservative wing always needs to ask, and they can't let down on this, 2 questions. Can we afford it? And are any rights lost by this new idea of the problem-solving? Now, here's what happens so often, is that when there's chaos and there's no rule, you can put this together in a circle. And whenever there's chaos, there'll always be a ruler to say, I'll take care of you. I'll bring everything back into focus. And that's why Obama's people look for chaos, because then they can easily take over, saying that they will fix the situation. I hope that you'll show this to your children, and then also the packet. Let's look at this just a minute. This is our golden mean Constitution, kind of for kids, but you know, us too, helps us too, these little techniques in here. On the first page, how many of you have read the 5,000-Year Leap? All right, okay, great. These are the 28 great ideas that are in the Constitution, in that golden mean, that the principles that show what anybody could do to write a constitution anywhere in the world. They could take these ideas and write their own constitution, using ours as a pattern. And I hope you all have these. There's some on chairs, and there's more up front. Next is the citizenship exam, which is so fun to take. Take it home to your spouses, your kids. See if they can answer these 100 questions that non-citizens have to take to become a citizen. So if they have to know that, we should know that too. Now, page 3, I've made for you here a 1-page outline of the Constitution on 1 page. So you can look at this and see the whole Constitution at a glance. And so at least on September 17th, when it was signed, you could at least read this. And it even has the amendments at the bottom with 1 line for each amendment. Okay, and next is from Article 1, Section 8. And these are the powers of Congress. And it's nice to just put this on your fridge, blow it up, because as you glance through that, do you see anything about education? Do you see anything about gun laws? Do you see anything about health care? None of those things are on here, because that belongs to the states and the local governments. These are the only powers that Congress can have. And that's something important we need to teach our kids. Then there's 4 words to define, and we won't take the time to go through that right now. But if you would like to see a discussion on that, I've got an online class for both kids and adults at thomasjeffersoncenter.com. And the answers to these words are on that website. And that's written at the top of your Ledge Sasser page. Next, 13 colonies. You know, out here in the West, do we have anybody here from the East? Nobody, okay. Out here in the West, we don't even know where the 13 colonies are. but they know which ones are theirs. And at one class, a woman raised her hand and she says, I'm from Delaware. We were the first ones to say that, to vote in the Constitution back in 1778, probably by then. And so I have a little story here. This is for the kids, so so you can read it yourself. We did it with Scouts not long ago, and the Cub Scouts. If you read the story, it's got little hints on it so that they can write in as you read the story what each colony is. Next, I have from 2011. I have the cabinet, and there's just a few changes to make on that, and it's almost just as fun to go through to see which of the changes are. And that's also the line of succession of the president. And this is my favorite page. This is from Article 3, Judiciary. It's got all the Supreme Court members. I worked hard and long on this to get the picture and then a little information about each Supreme Court judge so that you can look on there and you can tell if the judge is liberal or conservative by who nominated him. Well, you could tell that until Supreme Court Justice Roberts pulled a crazy thing on us with Obamacare. And now we're really a little bit confused on that one. But Kennedy is the one who always changes back and forth. And do remember that I did this in 2011, so add 2 years to each one. Then we have the hand motions for memorizing the preamble. And it's so fun to get a bunch of kids together and dress them in red, white, and blue for any one of your functions that you have. And have them do these little preamble hand motion things. Then, what can I do a page? You know, what can we do? It's just very, very frustrating right now to know what we can do. But there are lots of things that we can do. We can be involved in government just as much as we can. And we can especially try to stay close to God or do the best you can do in doing what you think is right. Always be informed. Teach each other. Know what your core beliefs are and know what the platform says. Read the platforms of the Republican Party and the Libertarian Party and the Democrat Party and then decide, well, where do I really belong? Most important thing, go out and vote. But the only thing worse than the dead voting is a brain-dead person voting. So don't ever vote without being informed. And elect moral and informed citizens. And the last page, it's fun to fill in the blanks, but you have all the answers already. So I hope that some of these techniques I've given you will help you to teach the younger generation and yourself. And you're welcome to use this. You can copy it for your family. And hopefully it will help to teach the golden mean of the Constitution. Now, sometimes we used to get discouraged with all that's going on right now. And how can we turn things around and what can we do? And so I asked my dad once. I was just really having a hard day. What will I do, Dad? What can I do? This is a mess. How can we ever get back to our original Constitution? And he says, honey, just be steady in being good and hold on because it's going to be a roller coaster ride. And he said, I've read the book, and in the end, we win. And so that has kept me going, and I hope it will for you. And I would like to tell you, I would like to pass this over to Paul because he's going to tell you what happens when the eagle kind of starts falling to the left here. And when it's not flying straight, then the eagle starts tipping. And that's a real danger that we're going through right now. So I'd like to introduce my brother Paul. He teaches journalism and communications at Utah Valley University. And he recently published a book on socialism called The Naked Socialist. And Where is that book? This is when you hold it up. Yeah. Okay. And he's the father of 10 children, and he resides in Salt Lake City. Pop.
Thanks so much, Sharon. At the White House, we have the West Wing. And down there on the ground floor is a closed-off room. It's called the Situation Room. And when you're in there, you can look out the windows and you can see the big limos coming and going as these high executive officials come to meet with the president. It's like a bunch of whales trying to parallel park. It's kind of funny to watch. And that's where I worked for 2.5 years, the Situation Room in the White House. Now, I don't know if spying on the president is a legal, lawful thing, but I did. I spied on President Reagan through a peephole. And it wasn't a peephole I made, it was a real peephole. And the way they set it up was the conference room. Inside the Situation Room, it has 2 doors, sliding wooden doors. They're soundproof. And they each had peepholes in them. And the reason for that was if we had a message we had to deliver, we could look through, see where people sat, and go through this way or that way so we didn't disrupt very much. Well, when I first started at the White House, I enjoyed watching President Reagan. He was at the head of the table, which meant at the far end, and he faced me. He faced that peephole, so I could see him. And I'd sit there and hoping I wouldn't get in trouble, but I'd sit there and I'd look through the peephole during their high-level meetings, and President Reagan would be in there and watching a tennis match, look to the left and look to the right and look to the left and look to the right. I thought, where's the president? I thought you're supposed to be leading and guiding and telling everybody what to do. Over several months, I watched, and that was always, I rarely saw him talk. Well, about this same time, the press was haranguing on Reagan again. They were saying, he's too old, he's too inattentive, his eyes are glazing over in meetings, he falls asleep, he dozes. And I thought, is it true? So I started to spy through that peephole with a different mission to find out the real Ronald Reagan. And you know what I saw? Tennis match. Look to the left, look to the right. Where's this great leadership? Well, what I did not see was that this master strategist was fighting fire with fire. And I simply didn't know who the enemy was. I couldn't see it with my own eyes. I was being fooled like others. But Reagan wasn't. He wasn't dozing, sleeping, ignoring, falling behind, letting everybody make the decisions. No, he knew exactly what he was doing. And it's taken me a long time to try and figure out who that enemy was that President Ronald Reagan was fighting within that very room. And the enemy that he was facing has been known by 1,000 names for thousands of years. There's nothing new to that. It's an attitude, a mentality, a perspective, an expectation. And today, we call it socialism. Now, too many people say, oh, it's a political party. No, it's much, much more. It is a mindset. Socialism is a way of looking at the world, looking at America, looking at power. That's what Reagan was fighting. Some of his top officials sitting there. We'd have the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, the FBI director would come in, CIA director, Joint Chiefs of Staff. These high-level people would sit around that table, reaching for the jar of jelly beans. And they would be arguing or discussing, and they had the perspective of bigger government is how we solve our problems. That's what socialism is, big government. I didn't see that at the time. I was too inexperienced. I was there as an intelligence analyst from CIA. How would I know what freedom is? So it's taken a whole long time to try and sort that out. And I wanted to just share a few thoughts about what I discovered trying to understand the enemy that was in the Situation Room those many long months that I used to watch for. And it was an interesting exploration because once I identified these characteristics, then whenever I picked up the newspaper, I'd say, oh my heavens, there it is again. I would pick up a history book. Oh my heavens, there it is again. Nothing new to socialism. So I want to teach you, let you go home with the 7 pillars of socialism. Well memorized in your head, and I'll show you how to remember them. It's how I teach my students at college, and they wonder, why are you doing that? Will it be on a test? No, just remember these, okay? Now, before we can talk about the enemy, we talk about the strength and what's right, and that's your 8 unalienable rights. That's what socialism has to shut down and kill. Your 8 unalienable rights are what's protected in the Constitution we were just talking about. So these are specific and they're categories. You can take the Bill of Rights and throw them at these 8. They're all in there. So let me give that to you first, okay? And this is how... Nothing up my sleeve, but this is how you'll remember them. And I use my right hand, the rights on my right, and that's how I remember these 8 rights. Okay, so this is how I begin. Here's all the people, here's me. I stand out. Your first inalienable right is you are an independent individual. You are not born to serve someone, to be a slave. Go to India, at least long time past, when the caste system was active. If you were born into the untouchables, that was your life. You could not associate, get education or anything. That's wrong. That's a violation of your unalienable right. Independent individual is your first one. And as an independent individual, you can make choices. So that's your second one. I use my pointer finger to help me remember. You know, I want that car and I want that job, and where's my photograph? I want her to date and marry. Okay, you point at what you want. That's your second one. Your freedom to choose. All right, number 3. Now, we do all these rights together all the time. You look at all your fingers, your middle finger's the biggest. Okay, so this is your right to property. How do I remember that? Well, because my middle finger's the biggest, it has the most real estate. Yeah. I know, this is Paul's poor brain, has to remember somehow, so that's how I remember. Real estate, it's property. You have an unalienable right to property, to acquire, develop, and dispose of property. What was your first piece of property? Your own self. Yes, thank you. Your body. It wasn't your house, a car, or anything. No, it's your body. That's yours, your first piece of property. And as we read from these great thinkers who've preceded all of us by centuries or thousands of years, what you do with your body and your mind is also your property. It's the fruit of your labor. You have the right to acquire, develop, dispose of property. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, I remember with this finger, your right to associate with anybody, your right to association. And I remember it because with this finger, because that's where you put your wedding ring, right? That's your ring finger. You associate with your spouse, with covenants and obligations and promises. Well, there's a lot of associations we can do with clubs, with churches, with or political organizations, all these different elements. Your freedom to associate. Nobody can tell you that you can or cannot associate. Okay, all right. Number 5 is my little finger. That's the littlest. Does that little finger need as much attention as my other fingers? Yeah, it does. It needs as much blood going through there and all the nerve synapses and all that. Even though it's little, it's equal as far as rights go. Your 5th unalienable right is equality to all the rights, equality amongst all others. The fact we're born here or there, rich or poor, regardless of race or location, we are all humans. We are all the same. In our rights, we are equal. So don't forget equality, even if you're a little finger. Okay. Make a fist. That's how you remember number 5. No, the number 6 comes along. Your 6th unalienable right is the right to defense. You can defend yourself. That's different than offense, but you can defend yourself. And you can do that with your fist. You can do it with a gun, with a knife, with an army, with a militia. You can go to a court of law, defend your rights there with a lawsuit. You can petition government. That's your right to defend yourself. Okay, number 7 You take your fist of defense and you put it on your heart right here. That makes you think of compassion. How is compassion an unalienable right? That's what separates us from the animals and everything else. We have the right to do and help other people and without being told. There's an interesting economic principle in compassion. In Michigan, some professors got some students together and they said, okay, we're going to test compassion. This is what we want to do. You've got a car, and this car blue books for $3,000. How will you change the price on that car based on compassion? So they told the students, what if your dad said, I need another car? Would you change the price? Most of the students dropped it by $500. Okay, what if the guy who stole your date for the prom came up to your front door to buy your car? This is a $4,000 car. I've really fixed the engine. Man, I've redone the cylinder. Good shape, $4,000. Okay, what if on your way to your house to make an appointment with someone coming to see your car, they cut you off on the freeway and they sped down the road and screech into your driveway and jump out and pound on your door? Yeah, it's up to $5,000 now, or the car's already sold. So, all right, well then, what about your girlfriend? Your girlfriend needs a car. Well, it's only $2,000. I'll loan you the money. All right, what if it's a single mom down the street, 2 kids, and she's got 3 jobs, and the bus won't take her to her new 3rd job? You would give her the car, wouldn't you? That's what the students said. That's compassion. Did we trade with Japan and Germany before we were fighting them in wars? How about during the war? Were we trading with those countries? Afterwards, we shook hands, maybe not arms around the shoulder, but we shook hands, said, okay, now let's rebuild. And who became the greatest economic powers in those 2 parts of the world, Japan and Germany? So compassion, and maybe that's too friendly of a word, but it's the word I use. Compassion is a big component of prosperity. So that's one of your unalienable rights. You can show compassion. And nobody can tell you you can't. What happens under socialism? We've got it here in America right now. Who takes care of our compassion? Big brother. Yep. Those numbers on our paychecks, where we get welfare taken out and other, who knows where all this goes. It's deducted. We are being forced to be compassionate, and that never, ever works. Never works. And as I describe in Naked Socialist, I show how did we take care of the poor? Humans have been here for a long time. We used to do it privately. We took care of our poor. It's when the government got involved, that's when things got messed up. It happened over in Europe. It was in the 1800s. Prussia, they were the beginning point for this. So that's where welfare started, and it's been state welfare, and it's been a mess ever since. Okay, your last unalienable right is you take your hand off your heart, you leave it in cupping shape, and you bring it in front of you like a beggar, saying, help. Well, why is a beggar an example of failure? Well, something is broken in that person's life and they need help and they're saying, please help me. This helps me remember of failure. Failure, falling flat on our face, is perhaps the most important unalienable right that we have, because through failure, that's how you learn. That's how we grow. And how many of us with children, do you want to be there helping your little kid who's trying to just barely walk? You know, if you're there every single time scooping them up so they don't fall down, could you learn to walk that way? Not very well. You don't learn balance because somebody's always coming in. So those are the 8 unalienable rights. And you're going to say, well, this doesn't sound like the Bill of Rights. You take any of the Bill of Rights, and each of those will fit divided among some of these 8. That's categories of unalienable rights. And that's how to remember them. Independent individual, choice, property, association, equality, defense, compassion, failure. All right. Now, let's move over to the bad guys, over to the socialism side. As I studied, as I dug into this strange, ugly darkness that has filled the earth with blood and horror for thousands of years, what are the common elements? The common elements attack the 8 rights on your right. Every single epoch and period and generation and culture does. So this is what they do. The first one, now we're going to do these on your left hand. Those of us that love the Bible, see the right hand, the left hand, know how that works? Okay. We're going to discuss the 7 pillars of socialism on your left hand. And once again, poor Paul's brain can't retain it, so I need these little tricks. In socialism, the common characteristics I found, the first of the 7 pillars of socialism is an all-powerful ruler. Every single one of them had that. It was not always an individual. It was sometimes a group of people. But that all-powerful individual could then do and say whatever he, she, or they wanted to. So I remember that by taking my left hand and I stick my thumb up. There's the ruler, standing above everybody else. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is society is divided into classes, into a caste system. And I think of that with my fingers. This looks like layers. The top layer is the elitists, those that are in charge. They're the ones that are in cahoots with the ruler. They carry out his or her policies all the way down in through society. This is common from ancient Sumer to ancient Egypt to Greece to the medieval periods to the heresies in the Protestant movement to you name it. That pattern is always there. Okay, that's number 2, second pillar. That's a caste system. Now, the ruler always wants to make everybody feel good and happy, so I make my hand go like this, and it looks like the letter C. I think of all in common. That's what socialism promises. We're going to have all things in common. No more haves and have-nots. We're going to level it out. And that's what the founders called it. They never said socialism. That word didn't come about till about 1800, roughly. So the founders would use the word leveling. You know, these schemes of leveling, they just don't work. To take from these and give to these. It always blows up. Never works. So things in common, that's pillar number 2 of all of these 7 bad ideas. Now, to have things in common, you make a fist and you go like this. Sorry. Can you tell I had my kids help me? See, that looks like the letter R, a lowercase r. That makes you think of regulate. You can't have things in common unless you're regulating everything, the market and the people and the laws and the outcomes and the incomes. Everything has to be regulated. Never works. Never, never, never works. It will temporarily, but the founders solved that, okay? So there we go. So here we go. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 5 is force, and I throw my fist in the air. These things are done with force. Socialism is established with force. Now, the founders had an answer for that, but all the other cultures, they couldn't. They could not address or get beyond force. When you're done with force, you bring your hand back down because you're tired of holding it up and Paul telling you to hold it up. And while you're coming down, you stop at your ear and you go, huh? And that helps you remember information. The 6th pillar of socialism is information control. And it makes me laugh. Well, okay, you know what I mean when I say laugh. It makes me mad. You look around at how information is manipulated to get you and I to believe certain things. Down in Argentina, gosh, my heavens, this poor guy, statistician, he's saying our unemployment is in the high teens and it's going to hit 20 real soon and it's going to go up to probably mid-20s by the end of the year. This is in 2011. And the government didn't like that number and they fired him and replaced him. And suddenly, guess what unemployment was? 8%. Oh, yes, just like here. Thank you. And what happens when you have 8%? Oh, you get foreign investors coming. And that's what happened in Argentina. All the investors kept going. Unemployment is down. That means you've got a prosperous society. So that's really good. Well, controlling information and the media leads us all to believe certain things that are not true. The rulers do that to keep control and keep charge of things. All right. And then we go to pillar number 7, which is no unalienable rights. And so to remember that, I take my left hand and I put it, ouch, on my right hand, which is my 8 rights on my right. And I cover them over. There's no rights. The government tells you what your rights are. Do you think you have the right to property? Which one is property? Number 3, right? The right to property. Do you think we have right to property here in America?
Not really anymore.
Not anymore. We used to, didn't we? What happens if you don't pay property tax on the house you've paid off? They come take it from you. Who really owns that house? Things are just really mixed up here.
Eminent domain too, that's taken it to give to somebody else.
Eminent domain, isn't that terrible?
And that one where that woman lost it, they never built that fancy hotel, so the city didn't get their taxes anyway.
Thank you. Exactly right. Examples of how the government taking property that's not theirs.
No restrictions they place on property.
Yes.
They make it almost, you've got property, you can pay your taxes on that property, but we're going to tell you exactly what you can and can't do.
Perfect. Thank you. Another comment.
With mobile home parks, they restricted from developing those incredibly in California. And so you get to have rent control and pay all these property taxes. It's ridiculous.
It's falling apart. Now, knowing these things, we can understand why the Founding Fathers were so brilliant in how they constructed our Constitution, because they specifically went after these 7 pillars of socialism and nailed those down, attacked them, made them illegal, and protected the 8 unalienable rights or categories of rights. That's what the Constitution did. And that's in the Naked Socialist. I spell all that out in Naked Socialist and show you how they took each one of these and took care of it with the articles and the sections. And if we would just hold up and obey them. And when Benjamin Franklin is leaving Independence Hall there after the Constitutional Convention, remember? And the woman comes up and says, well, Dr. Franklin, what have you given us? And he said, a republic, if you can keep it. I think the if statement is overlooked too much. If you can keep it. He knew things that had already started that others did not. It was Alexander Hamilton. He came in on one of the first days of the Constitutional Convention and he lectured those founders for 5 hours. 5 hours, that's worse than me. And he told them, this is what we got to have. We got to follow the British system. We want to have a lifetime president. We want to have lifetime senators. We need to have a central banking system. He introduces socialism at the convention. Benjamin Franklin, he walks out, he knew that. And it took about a good century for all of these to eventually mature in our country. So today, you look around and you look at these 7 bad ideas and the 8 good ideas. Those are your measuring sticks. And I'm going to give you an example real quick and show you how to use them as a way to judge things. Let's take some political thing. Auto bailout. I'll do the auto bailout. Here comes the auto bailout. This is how you look at it. You take up your rights on your right. And you go, okay, money went to the auto industry. Does that affect me as an independent individual? Not particularly. I don't feel it. You know, I live in Utah. I'm not out in Detroit and these other locations where cars are made. So I don't feel too threatened. How about my freedom of choice, my right to choose? That's improved. There's more cars being made. So that's good. The money helped keep them going, keep them these things, the factories going. What about right to property? Are your taxes your property? You bet they are. Well, the federal government took some of my taxes and they gave them to those folks building the cars. Why didn't they give them to underpaid, suffering university professors with a lot of kids? I needed that money more than they did. And so that's a violation of the use of my property. Okay? All right, what about association? Nothing really big there. Equality? No. There's nothing equal about the federal government helping an individual like that, individual in industry. Defense, didn't see anything big there. Compassion, not a lot. What about failure? Oh, what a violation of the freedom to fail. Had those auto industry folks collapsed and been allowed to collapse, who would have stayed standing? Yes, those running on a better business model. That's who would have remained. And the whole environment would have changed. The free market enterprise, the competitiveness. Do you know that the unions were getting upwards of $70 to $80 an hour to stand on a line and just assemble cars? Can you believe that? That's huge. And you compare that with some of the others where the unions don't have such a lock hold, like Toyota. I love Toyota, even though it's a 98 and it's rusting, but I still love my Camry. Yeah, it does. It does. And you can plan on what happens with a GM car right around 110, 120,000. What $2,000 or $3,000 expense suddenly breaks? The transmission. You can count on it. At least you used to. I don't know about nowadays. But anyway, so here we have non-union automakers. The prices per hour are lower, but they're more free, they're more efficient. Quality innovation is appearing in their manufacturing because socialism, as we have it in America, is out of the picture on those auto manufacturers. So, okay, did I get through all of those? All seven? Did I get through all seven? Okay. So that's how you do it. That's how you use those seven that's how you use any idea and go through your 8 rights and see if they've all been attacked. The freedom to fail would have allowed better companies to emerge. So read all about it in the Naked Socialist. That's where I tried to explain all these principles, and I've even got some extra copies here because, Paul has to pay for my 10 kids, and you're welcome to come up and buy one if you want. Please.
Even here in the last days, too many people talked about a democracy.
Ah, thank you.
And it's a constitutional republic.
Right.
And we need to do that, not call it a democracy, because democracy is mob rule.
Yep, thank you. One man, one vote.
To explain to people what the difference is between a republic and a democracy.
Okay.
Because most people's eyes glaze over when they attempt to do that.
Thank you. Very good. Democracy, I have this little, I think, one man, one vote. That means the majority will always win. Now, I love my Wendy's hamburgers. If the majority decides that meat is bad, that it adds to global warming, that it clogs your arteries, that it's cruelty to animals, and they outlaw or tax meat, and democracy processes vote on that, then it doesn't matter. I can't have my Wendy's hamburgers anymore. But I can have a representative who will take my cause to a higher level. So I'm glad you said constitutional republic, because just having a republic, representatives, well, they had that in Rome. Where was their constitution to guide them into correct government? So you need the constitution that rules supreme over one and all. And that's what we've been talking about. So republic is representative government all the way down to the bottom. Another confusion, I think, is the 17th Amendment. Howard Stevenson is my state senator on the legislature. I can go to Howard and say, did you know our senator voted for TARP? That guy's thinking like a socialist. He wants bigger government. I want that guy out of there. Well, Howard could take my complaint, go meet with his friends in the legislature, and they could all agree, and they could call up our senator and say, hey, you're done. You've been voting like a socialist for too long. Psst, you got 2 weeks. Your replacement is on the way. What I just described to you is how the Constitution was originally written. The 17th Amendment came and destroyed that. I know where Howard lives. I've been to church with Howard. I've been to luncheons and speeches. He's a good friend. He and I can talk. Can I talk to my senator? Yeah, no way. I can't get past the front desk. This is Paul calling from Salt Lake. Can I speak to the senator? Sorry, he's busy. Let me get a staffer to help you. You can't get through.
Our state senator was campaigning, and I asked him a question he didn't like, and he turned on his heel like I was nobody.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I don't don't remember what the question was, but I'm sure it wasn't it. It was just probably about what he was doing or something, but it turned on his heel.
All I have to do is go to church and say, guess what Howard said, and he's out of office the next election. Please.
So the question is, what did the federal government do to convince the states to give up the power in order to get through the 17th Amendment?
Right. That is what I saw in the Situation Room watching President Reagan. It's a mindset. The principles of true freedom had been so lost that people began looking to government to solve their problems. And they saw that here's the senators. We can't get the action we want out of our senators. We need more help from the government. We've got the legislature standing in the way. How do we get past and beyond that? And the American people simply let it go. They let the 16th Amendment go the same time. The Federal Reserve went the same time. The socialization of America took on a quick, rapid jump start during that period. The New Deal period that came shortly thereafter. In the book, I call it the revolution of the socialists. The miracle that stopped that progression happened at the Constitutional Convention, and we have since let it go. A republic if you can keep it. And unfortunately, we've not done too good of a job. I have great hope that we can fix it. And if you can take the 8 and the 7 and use those as you look at things and rehearse Ledge Sasser over and over in your mind, keep these uppermost in your thinking. There's really only one place. We've battled, we've tried to talk on the macro level how we're going to save America. You know what? That isn't where it's going to happen. A change in the presidency or in parliaments around the world, that's not going to be where it gets fixed. It gets fixed in the individual human heart. That's the beginning place. If you're thinking like a socialist, you're not going to get any changes anywhere anytime soon. You need to stop saying there ought to be a law. You're thinking like a socialist. I wish they would do what's right. You're thinking like a socialist. You want government to come in and force someone to obey your will with a law. You're thinking like a socialist. The founders knew how to do it. Handle issues on the local level, not on the federal level. Restrain the feds. Open up the locals. At least I can go to lunch with Howard and get our local problems solved. Thank you very much. We're out of time. You've been patient. I appreciate it. Go over.